So now that we understand how to discover them, we can actually go ahead and start communicating with the database and start retrieving data from the database, like the usernames and the passwords, like I said earlier. But before we do that, I just want to show you an example of how we can bypass a login page using very simple statements, using the AND statements or OR statements, very simple SQL statements. So we're going to come back to this example later, but I just want to show you this very simple way of bypassing login screens or login pages if they are vulnerable to SQL injections. So we're going to go to the My Account in here, and we're going to put the username as admin and then the password. First of all, before you try to hack it, you should try a normal password. So if you just put a test, you'll notice that it's giving you invalid username or password. Now, if you try to manipulate this a little bit, so if you do test and you put the password as a single quote, you'll see you get something different. Now, you're not always going to get an internal server error. You might just get a different type of error. As long as it's not saying invalid username and password, it should be a cue to you that there might be something else. Now, obviously, not just the comma, you should try and 1 is equal to 1 or 1 is equal to 1. There's, like I said, there's a good bit of trial and error. The username could also be vulnerable, but we're just playing with the password in this example. And what we're trying to do in here, you should always try to visualize what's happening at the back end when you try to execute or to load the page. So in this example, we're putting a username and a password and we're clicking at login. So the web application is probably doing something like this. Select star from users, where the username is the username that you're inputting in the username field, and the password is the password that you're entering in the password field. Now, if we want to log into this, we're saying select star from user, where the username is admin, because we're putting admin in the username field, and password is equal to, we don't know the password, but what we can do is we could input a quote to close it. So we put any password, even if it's the wrong password, and then we close it in a quote. And then we say or 1 is equal to 1. So if you try to evaluate this, the database engine is going to try to select a record where the username is admin, and there is a record that has a username and the value of it is admin, and the password is test, and that is false. There is no password that is test for the user admin, but we're adding to it or 1 is equal to 1, which is true. So anything or true is true in logic. Therefore, regardless of what's happening in here, the web application is going to let you to log in as admin if it's vulnerable. So all I'm going to do in here, single quote, or 1 is equal to 1, and then we're going to comment the rest of it. I'm going to copy it, paste it here, and I'm going to log in as admin, not test. We're going to log in, and perfect. Now we are logged in as administrator, as you can see. So this is a very simple example of bypassing a login screen, simply using logical statements like or and and. It's just a really good example to show you how manipulating SQL statements could be very, very useful. So I just wanted to use this example to help you understand how we can use these or and statements. They're very useful for discovering SQL injections even more than bypassing login screens, because to be honest, it's hard to actually find this in real life now to bypass a login page using SQL injection. But it's a really good exercise for you to learn how to manipulate these queries to test for SQL injections, because it's very important to learn how to discover these vulnerabilities. A lot of people think that they don't exist, but they really do. They're just harder to discover. And most people would just put a quote and expect to discover SQL vulnerabilities. No, you won't. That's not going to happen in real life. You're going to have to do it with logic statements like the and the or and the order by. We're going to have another example now soon. But it's more about knowing how to discover it, literally catching up to very small details. I've had pages before where what made me discover that it's actually vulnerable, it was literally something changing in the source code or an image not loading somewhere at the background. So you have to be very careful with what you're looking at.